Well, good afternoon, everybody. After a heavy lunch, it's always nice to have something not as heavy as we've had in the last couple of days. But I always clarify when I start this speech that I want people to understand this is about what you do for yourself in the future. So while this is not around disability, and while this is not around the work that we do, it is around the work that you do for yourself and how that interacts with your professional life, and how important it is in the community-based sector to be involved in finding a good balance. So let's first start and say that the conference organizers have asked me to remind you during the conference, please turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. Phone karma is a real thing.
Hey, bro. Ah, the vet. Yeah, all dogs. Oh! Yeah.
Cell phone karma. It's real.
So it's really important that you have your cell phones turned off. I love work-life balance because it's important to maintain a balance between your work life and family life. There are 12 hours, 24 hours in a day, so why aren't you working 12 every day? Now, for most people in community, we take this as our mantra. We work way too much. We don't concentrate on ourselves enough, and we don't seem to look at what are the things that we can change in our own lives to find a better work-life balance. First of all, I want to forewarn everybody, work-life balance is never balanced. In fact, really, this is about how are you able to make better choices and make sure that things in your life are always going to be one or the other. There's always going to be too much work, but there's always going to be too much personal. The piece here is how do you find time for yourself, your work, and the things that are important to you. This is normal when work-life balance is not reached, because everybody thinks, well, I have to get this perfect balance. No, it doesn't exist. There's always going to be one up and one down, and one up. So you have to learn to manage that change more than anything. And it's all about making more informed choices about what it is that you're going to do, what's important to you, and what's important to your work. I want to talk a little bit about some of the HR issues that we're facing as a community of not-for-profit or NGOs. And according to the HR study, of the labor force study, it tells us that there are more than 1.2 million Canadians working in the not-for-profit sector. Very often when I worked in the not-for-profit in the beginning, I felt very alone. Were people doing the same thing as I was? Were they having the same failure or the same challenges as many of us in the community? And so you had to start to realize that all of those together make up an industry. But collectively, our voice is stronger, but we have to remember that government is planning for labor shortages in manufacturing, forestry, skilled labor. But what they're not looking at is what's going to happen to the labor force in the not-for-profit. Because none of us are getting any younger, well, some of us, we're also getting burned out. And because we don't have work-life balance, we find it a real challenge to be able to maintain long-term ability to attract workers. How many people in the room have had somebody in their office change in the last 5 months? How many people are expecting to have another staff change in the next 5 months? So it's an ongoing issue. And if you as managers and as co-workers inside an organization aren't able to manage this change, your work day to day is going to be affected. And your ability to balance home and life are going to greatly be affected. So what do we look like? What are the characteristics of the organizations across the country? More than half of the not-for-profit and voluntary organizations have existed for 28 years or more. So that's a little bit of a positive statistic. We know that we stay around when we do good work. But that being said, we also have to remember that in 60% of organizations, the responsibility for HR falls to one person. And it's usually the CEO or the manager. It's very often there's no one person solely responsible for human resources or for the planning that needs to go in that. We also have to look at the fact that the sector organizations employ a median of 5 people. How do you manage an office with 5 staff? Well, this is a daily occurrence for us. So if you can't work with those 5 people, or you're having challenges with them leaving, entering, we have to remember that there are training costs, the HR costs, the changes to your organization. If you work in a small organization with 5 people, when one person leaves and somebody new comes on, that's a challenge. And that will affect your ability to be productive. And more than 1/3 of the organizations don't offer employee benefits. Now this is a real contrast to the private industry, because 92% of profit organizations offer some sort of benefits package. And I've always wondered, and I've questioned government constantly in my 20 years in this industry, why is community or not-for-profits not valued enough to have pension, health? Well, the answer is not always clear from government's idea, but I would say that very often government is challenged to find the value in what we do. We need to continue to remind government, this isn't our work, this is their work that they can't do, that we are doing for them. It shouldn't be a lower standard than what they get for everything else, because what we've learned is we do it better, we do it faster, we do it more community-based, and we usually do it for a whole lot less. So it's really important that when you're working with your funders, you remind them that your ability to do the work is based on their resources and their support of your organization. So it's really, really critical that you understand that we have to have good benefits. We're not looking for the GM pension package. As everybody knows, in the not-for-profit, you're on the Freedom 85 plan. You're going to retire, maybe you might retire when you're 85. So what are the key findings that we've seen? Well, Canada's not-for-profit voluntary sector is the 2nd largest in the world. The Netherlands is first, and we beat out the US. Yay, Canada! There are an estimated 161,000 not-for-profit organizations in the country. Half of these are run entirely by volunteers. And sometimes, I gotta be honest, that's a challenge. The difference between volunteer and not-for-profit. I'm a paid staff person. I run a multi-million-dollar not-for-profit organization, but I have a volunteer board of directors. And when organizations are sometimes run by volunteers, there can be a little bit of a miscommunication between paid staff and voluntary. So we need to make sure that we understand how those things happen. 2 million people are employed by organizations, and it's 11%. So why do we struggle with government to explain our value when we're already 11% of the economy? And we are actually 7.8% of the GDP. We produce more for the economy than any and all car manufacturing plants. Do you think that the government is going to come in and buy up our stock when we go under? Not going to happen. But these are the information and statistics we need to continue to give to government so that they can continue to see value in what we do. And smaller provinces have a higher number of organizations relative to their population. So usually in more rural areas, you have more community-based organizations, which means that it's a drain on the same 50 people in the community. So finding, again, that balance and working with people to find solutions. And the top 1% of organizations command 66% of the money. It's like the wealth breakdown in the world. 95% of the wealth is held by 5% of the people. Well, we face the same thing in community sectors. And so with all of these challenges, you are, again, constantly challenged. How do you work within the confines of your operation and address these issues, but at the same time, having a home life, having a family life, having the ability to enjoy the fruits of your labor?